Hello again, everybody. Another installment of Church Debater and Preacher Mike. And if you didn't know, I am Preacher Mike. But like I said, for this month, this is the father-son tag team version of this program. Austin, how you doing?
Doing well. I am glad to know that you are still displaying Stephanie's shrine behind you up to the left. The
Yeah.
younger of the siblings and the twin, we had to share a photo half the size of her single photo. It's okay.
Yeah,
Not
but you
bitter
know
about it.
what Stephanie would say is, at least now I'm not being overlooked.
That's true. For once, she's being seen at eye level. That's good. I like that.
There you go. That's exactly right. Yeah. So just so everybody knows now, are you nervous tonight?
I feel like this is just a rerun of the last 15 years of our relationship together.
Okay. Now, just to fill in everybody, I'm taking the debater part tonight.
That's
That's
true.
my role. And so I'm springing stuff on Preacher Austin.
Got no idea what's coming.
And we're going to hit a very controversial, but absolutely necessary topic. And of course, you'll know what I'm doing when I make this next statement, because we are recording tonight's program on Martin Luther King Day. And I would like for us to have a conversation about the Christian response to the concept of various cultures, nations, races, if you will, and how God would expect us to deal with that. So let's begin with this question. Does it bother you, not talking in a spiritual sense right now, but let's work into it. Does it bother you that we would have in our country special days to honor individuals of the past in a secular sense? Does that bother you at all?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I do wonder who is on the board of making those decisions, but
I don't know if there was a board. I have no idea.
I don't either. I mean,
Yeah.
who gets to make that executive call for a
Right.
nation of people?
Well, was that? I think a lot of these were set by Congress, of course.
Okay.
But so I don't think there's an issue here
No,
with
no problem.
honoring people. I don't have any problem. It's no kind of Christians. Should Christians feel that there's a problem with being a Christian but honoring somebody individually with a day like this? Does that cause a problem for the Christian mentality?
Mentality, I would say no. You can honor and memorialize people
Mm-hmm.
as long as they're in their proper place, not ahead of Jesus, of
Okay.
course.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even where was it discussed about religious days and ceremonies?
Yeah, Romans 14.
Romans 14.
Right, right.
Yeah. So that was something that he didn't say you're not allowed to do.
Right.
It's something you feel obligated to do, have at it.
Okay.
Don't hold it
So
upon other people who don't feel obligated.
right. So when we've had discussions in the past about having religious days to of our own, which you just addressed. So we don't have any problem with that. So in a secular way, I don't have a problem with this, and I don't think Christians should have a problem with it. Now, number two, is it a problem for a Christian to have these kinds of days that honor people who don't have the kinds of Christian values that we think Christians ought to have. Is that a problem?
It's hard when anybody makes a general statement without acknowledging the nuance of life.
Oh, that's good.
And so you can't just throw some blanket statement like, yes, of course you can. Obviously, I have to qualify that by saying I may support this person or appreciate what this person did while not supporting that part of their life or this particular statement or set of beliefs or even seeming lack of morality they have in this area. So I think, as Christians, we just have to have maturity to say there's a nuance. There are nuances in life that I can say, I appreciate this. I don't like that. I like what this person is doing in this area, but clearly they're not consistent because of what they're doing over here. And I can say thank you for one and not the other.
It's fair to say that because there's nobody with whom we would agree on every single point anyway, right?
My wife and I wouldn't agree on everything. You and I wouldn't agree on everything. But we have clearly large opinions that agree with one another. But yeah, nobody, I agree with nobody 100%. And also, there's no person who is without flaw or failure that I would be upset by.
I've often said it's not possible for me to agree with any one person fully because I often don't even agree with myself.
Self.
So
and then there's that own can of worms of how I get frustrated with my own self.
there you go.
That's
So
good.
the issue of today with having this Martin Luther King Day should not cause a problem for any Christian. This is not an issue of Christianity versus non-Christian behavior or concepts.
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, I can be bothered by how certain pieces and parts of modern day culture may try to hijack the day
Yes.
and twist it to their own
Yes.
set of beliefs or use it for their own agendas.
Right.
I can be bothered by that.
Right.
I can be bothered by people who refuse to acknowledge the good that this man did in his life. I can be bothered by that. But no, I don't think this has anything to do I don't think this in any way disrupts Christian values, Christian morals, or in any way should bother an individual for saying, hey, I'm grateful for how that man stood up for justice, for rights. And he did it also in a peaceful, and I would say in what I've read and what I've seen, a godly way in most areas.
So that is perfect for moving into the idea of specifying what kinds of reasoning, what reasons or ideas, if there are any more in addition, why should Christians not only not have a problem with it, but in fact be appreciative of what it stands for? What is it? What does this day stand for in concept that Christianity would also agree with this particular day of honor?
So you have said this before, and I've heard others say it as well. America is a unique nation in the history of the world in that it was founded upon Christian biblical morals and principles. And because of that, and since that is the case, I think we as the people who are in America, not everybody is a Christian, not everybody even holds to Christendom.
Right.
But being that as it is, we have a right and an obligation to stand up for those Christian morals and support anybody who's trying to promote them.
Very good.
And so go ahead.
No, you go.
So I was just simply saying that I can acknowledge that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants who have created an atmosphere and a culture and a nation for me today to carry out my Christian values and have the freedom to speak my belief system without fear of anything. whether or not he and I would agree with everything doctrinally or not. And I could give you a list of other people who fit in that same categories as Martin Luther King.
Right.
That I, if we had a discussion or a Bible study, if I could go back in time and walk through these pieces of what I think Scripture teaches, we may not agree on those things,
right?
But because those men and women worked to create some pillars that I stand on, I get to say, I should say thank you.
So, as Christians, what are some principles that Christianity supports that this day is also at least supposed to represent? What kind of Christian principles can we all stand on today?
So my mind immediately went to Galatians 3:28.
Good.
27 and 28. As many of you as were baptized into Christ Jesus are one in him.
Good.
Slave nor free, male nor female, Jew nor Greek. That's out of order, but that's the whole point there. And oneness. Ephesians chapter 4, this one concept, the unification of people.
Good.
And I love that this day is promoting that unity.
Yes.
Because we live in a world that loves dissension.
Right.
And disunity, pulling people apart. Now, it's not going to say that. I'm not going to say they too much because I don't know who they all are.
Right. Right.
But things that I see, it seems like
there might be some.
There might be some. That's true.
Some who might hijack it.
That's right. To try and hijack, of course.
Right.
But what I love is the principle of
oneness.
Oneness in Christ.
So the first principle that you're suggesting is that Christians can support this, the concepts behind this, because we believe that all people are one.
Absolutely.
In Christ, should be all one in Christ. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
God created us. We are part of, there's only one race, the human race, and God created it that way. And we should seek to draw all people, all mankind back to that reality. And I'd also like to say this. There are some things we can agree with people groups when we don't agree with all the details.
Right.
And there's sometimes we need to stand with other groups.
That's right.
Even if we don't agree on all the details. I remember when I was in West Kentucky and Marshall County, Kentucky was fighting against allowing alcohol sales in the county. And all Christian groups came together, every single one of them. Well, I say every single one was invited to a meeting in which we would talk about how we at the church, local church level are going to go promote this amongst our people and our communities. And I was all for that because there's a certain level in the filter of fellowship and the filter of unity that we can be together and ought to be together, I might say, because of some fundamental things that this group is trying to push.
That's good. Okay. So oneness is one of those things.
Yeah.
Give me another one that might be a principle that Christianity stands for that would be a part of what this day was intended to be.
I can't decide if I want to go with peace.
Good. I like that one too.
But that was one of the others that I was considering.
I love it. I think that's a good one.
Oh, for sure. I love the way in which he is remembered peaceably, kindly, killing people with kindness. When people were terrorizing and attacking, he chose to go the other route.
Yes.
And in our culture today, which seems like people are pouring gasoline on sparks, waiting for an explosion.
Right.
I think this might be a day and age in which we need to promote that peace, that peaceable attitude that he lived with amongst our own people, regardless of our opinions or our feelings, and especially when our emotions are starting to run wild, because too many people watch too much TV, read too much on this on social media and don't live in real life with real people.
Yes.
So they just become emotional wild cards. So you need to work to have peace.
Good.
That's when Jesus said to turn the other cheek. I don't think that meant that we as people must be run over and let people run over us. I don't think that's what Jesus was talking about. I think Jesus was saying the core fundamental principle of Christianity is an inner attitude of graciousness and kindness. If you go 1 mile, offer 2.
There you go.
Don't be bitter while walking the first mile, thinking, oh, this is terrible, this is awful. No, sometimes inconveniences are actually opportunities. We just have to change our inner attitude to one of peace and kindness.
Yes. And
see what God he does as far as opening doors.
Okay, so we have oneness,
Mm-hmm.
we have peace.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to give another one?
So
I'll suggest one whenever you want.
Yeah, no, that's great. I want to talk about culture preferences.
Good.
I came up with the phrase 2 years ago, in the midst of all the culture wars that America had, and we're still having, even though, still having.
Sure we are. Mm-hmm.
I made a statement that said, I have a problem when my preference becomes my prejudice.
Oh, that's very good.
And I was saying that in reference to, why do we have the black church down the street and the white church up the street still?
Mm.
Now, not every community may have that, but that's how it is in my community. That's how it was in other communities I'm familiar with. I think it is a shame that we as human beings, not we as white people versus they as black people, but we as human beings will allow some preferences to keep me away from unifying with other brothers and sisters in Christ for worship and for the oneness that I think God has to offer within our communities.
I think you have veered into a great segue for the theme of this, because we can't get away from the idea that all of us are a part of, is it fair to say, in some way, we're all a part of multiple cultures at the same time.
Oh, yes.
For instance, I'm a part of a culture of people who are over 60. You're a part of a culture of people in their 30s.
Mm-hmm.
We are both a part of a culture of Caucasian Americans. You're a part of an Alabama culture. I'm a part of a Kentucky culture.
I grew up in the gray state, while Mom had the Iowa culture and you had that South Georgia culture.
Florida.
North Florida.
Yep.
North Florida, right. South Georgia. Yeah, talk about a clash. Yeah, we're multiple cultures at once. Nuance. So again, we have to acknowledge we all exist in a deeper level of nuance than sometimes we're willing to acknowledge or talk about.
Absolutely. And that culture, there would be no better way for the Lord's church, I would think, to speak to the culture than to be representative of all of those cultures. What do you think?
I think we do ourselves and our God a disservice by streamlining who we are and what we look like.
Yes, yes.
And if I'm just being very honest, and I'm not speaking for the Florence Boulevard Church of Christ, I'm not speaking for the Johnson family, I'm speaking for Austin.
Sure.
I think what holds us back is simply a prejudice of preference. And I'm not talking about skin color.
No.
I'm talking about, there are certain groups of people that just seem to be really emotionally joyous and happy in their praise, while other people like holy silence and holy stillness. Both people love God. It just looks and it showcases itself differently. Some people like a rambunctious style of preaching. Some people like the calm, inner, peaceful spirit of teaching in outline form. And I could go on and on and on.
I'm really glad that we could bounce from this day into church culture. And then when we do, and I'm giving you a heads up, once we go through just a little bit more, I want to bounce back
Okay.
to give a close on the day.
Gotcha.
But let's keep going with the culture. So what we are also saying, am I right? We have all of these cultures, but there is not a way to say this culture is better than this culture.
No. And I also don't think it's possible to say we should try and have this one culture, or we should all try and be like that culture. I actually think the more people come together, it's not really the more you gain. It really becomes, how much more am I willing to give up? Because as we try and merge, or we try and unify, or our people groups grow, what that ultimately means is less and less people are getting their preferences and getting their way. So that means more and more people are actually having to lay down preferences for the sake of coming together to be one.
So are you then saying that Christianity expresses itself best when my preference that is higher than my personal preference becomes my preference for the brotherhood or the congregation that I'm a part of?
When I completely accept that the greatest preference I can have is just one where I prefer to be together and be unified with more people, then try and have it my way more often.
So are you in a situation, this is rhetorical, but I'm going to ask it. Are you in a situation where your congregation does everything just like your preferences would be personally?
I have thought so often, I just want to start my own church. I have had that thought countless times.
Yep.
But it's a ridiculous thought. That thought is based purely upon pride and really laziness and a lack of love for people.
But wouldn't it also be true that the very first person that came would have a different preference from you anyway, and so your church would not represent? Yeah. So
the Church of Jesus Christ through Austin's eyes.
That's it. And so I think the idea of saying that my preference is not being met at this church, well, I have to make a decision. And that decision is, do my preferences, am I going to let my preferences so control me that I don't want to be there anymore?
Yeah.
Well, let's not be too quick to be judgmental, meaning, so is it okay when my preferences are such that I choose that congregation versus this congregation?
Are there certain times when I have to have an honest conversation with myself about where I am and what church group I'm a part of? Absolutely. Right. People would not be in their right mind if they weren't having those honest conversations. But I would suggest, when in those spaces and when having those conversations, be honest with yourself as to why it is you're looking elsewhere, or why it is you've become upset or disenfranchised with one group or the greater group. Right. And I think that's important. And a couple safeguards for people would be have a close group of mentors, of loved ones that you can bounce things off of in a safe space that won't just feed you answers you want to hear, but actually give you the truth. That's what's key. You may have close friends, but all they're doing is just completely supporting your bias and your preference.
Good
But
point.
to have somebody in your life that you can have a mature relationship with, which means you can disagree but still be together,
Good.
that's a great safeguard when in that space of life. I would also say don't make any decision quickly.
There you go.
See, our emotions get riled up quickly, but our decisions should be handled slowly.
Good.
If decisions are slow, emotions come and go. And as emotions go, I think our decision will be made more clear and it will be more neutral without that emotion in the background.
Very good. Now we have about 2 or 3 minutes.
All right.
Let me summarize that and then go back toward the close. The church should be a culture in itself that recognizes that there are individual preferences. And those individual preferences are often set aside for the growth and the maturity of the group as a whole. That's how cultures merge. When I think about the culture merging of what we're talking about from this particular day,
That's right.
we have to be able, as you said, to work together because we are equal. We ought to be at peace. We have our own preferences, but we're able to adjust them in order to live this country. We should adjust our preferences as ethnically submissive to the group culture of this country to have a strong country, because all of these different groups provide a strength that makes our country a special place to be.
The happiest people and the most cohesive groups are the ones who are willing to swallow and let go of things for the greater good and the greater unity of people.
I want to close with this verse from Acts 17 when Paul was preaching on Mars Hill. And he found people who were worshiping a bunch of idols.
Yeah.
And he looked at them and he said, God made from one blood all nations of men. Do you think that that was a statement that certainly includes whether I am Asian, European, African, whatever I am? All of us have one blood given from God. It flows in all of our veins, and we should find a way to be people as Christians who have a Christian culture, not an ethnic culture. Is that a good statement?
That's absolutely a tremendous statement.
Okay.
Whether it's ethnic, regional, current versus time, culture.
Good. Very good.
You can slice this 100 different ways. What we do is connect ourselves to Christ and lay aside whatever it takes to draw others with us.
Hey, I like it. I think we have really...
We've solved it all.
We've got... Probably. We've certainly dug deep inside what really is about the principles behind what's going on.
I think so.
And we can, as Christian people, continue to say, let us be Christian, no matter what our ethnic or whatever culture might be. Let us be Christian.
I love it.
Okay, we're at the end.
Yes.
Greg always does this to me, so I'm going to do it to you.
All right.
Whether it's on this topic or not, give us a 20-second closing statement, a lesson to take with anybody who's listening.
On a day like today,
Okay.
we, in our country, those who choose to do it are acknowledging a man who did great things.
Okay.
Did he live a perfect life? No. But he did great things in the midst of imperfection. I'm grateful to God that despite all of my imperfections, my failures, my shortcomings, that through Jesus, it's the good that is coming up in his eyes. And God doesn't just see me for all my bad things.
I like it. Good principle growing out of today. Well, thank you all for being a part. We're going to do this another couple of times, I think. But thanks for listening in. to church debater and preacher Mike. And now I will say to preacher Austin, say goodbye, Austin.
Goodbye, Austin.
There you go. Bye-bye.